Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'll begin today by handing over to the Health and Social Care Minister, David Ashford, who will provide you with the latest figures. David.
Thank you, Chief Minister. The total number of tests undertaken is 7,817. The total tests concluded is 7,801. We're awaiting results from 16 tests. There is no new identified cases, so our total case count remains at 330, Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, David. Now, today is the 64th day without any new cases of COVID-19 on the Isle of Man. That's over 2 months since anyone has had the unenviable task of standing at this podium to announce that a member of our community has contracted the virus. And like me, I am certain no one misses those days. Across the British Isles, only ourselves and fellow Crown dependency Guernsey have achieved local elimination of the virus. That there are still active cases in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Jersey and Ireland remains, and it reminds us that we cannot let our guard down. Although life here feels relatively normal, COVID-19 is still with us and still likely to be so for some time. But whilst we must be cautious, there is also room for optimism. Our neighbours are now making steady progress in their fight against the virus, and some aspects of life there are returning to their pre-COVID rhythm as restrictions are eased. This has been reflected in our borders policy with the move from level 5 to 4 that came into effect this Monday. Should Isle of Man residents wish to leave our shores for non-essential journeys, they are now free to do so and return, subject to undertaking 2 weeks of self-isolation. I want to take this opportunity to again outline the simple but important process that residents returning to our island must follow. If you have not already done so and you intend to travel, you must register for Government's online services at services.gov.im. You will need to log in and select the Travel Notification Service. The first stage is to apply for a Manx entry permit. You will be asked to provide your national insurance number and/or tax reference number and your residential address. This ensures that only returning Isle of Man residents can cross our border. With those details provided, a Manx entry permit will be created for you. This part of the process is a one-off application and the Manx entry permit remains in place for all future travel. The second stage is to apply for a landing form. Now you need to do this at least 48 hours prior to any return journey to the Isle of Man. The form includes a health declaration and notifies government of the address at which you will be self-isolating for the 14 days. The Travel Notification Service went live last Friday, and although it is early days, I can advise that as of lunchtime today, 2,203 Manx entry permit registrations have been completed and 429 landing forms have been generated. My thanks to everyone who has followed this new process. You are helping to keep our island and our community safe. On the topic of travel, I mentioned earlier that across these islands, only Guernsey joins us in having achieved local elimination of COVID-19. This has enabled us to open an air bridge between our two islands. I am pleased to say that the first flight from Guernsey touched down at Ronsway yesterday with 98 holidaymakers on board. The Manx weather has been on fine form of late with a few warm and sunny days, which promptly made way yesterday for drizzle. The return journey to Guernsey saw 122 residents depart the Isle of Man for a break there. And to add insult to injury, naturally the sun was cracking and the flags were flying in Guernsey. Joking aside, this is a really strong start to our new air bridge, which is pleasing to see. I extend the warmest of welcomes to our visitors, and I hope they have a pleasant and relaxing visit to our beautiful island. Other news this week has also given us cause for optimism. There are thought to be 140 vaccines for COVID-19 in early development, a number of which have already begun clinical trials. One such trial is the vaccine being developed by Oxford University, which on Monday was confirmed as successfully triggering an immune response in a trial with 1,077 individuals. Now, there is still some way to go with larger trials required and a full determination of what level of protection, if any, this vaccine might provide. But the early results are extremely promising. The United Kingdom has already ordered 100 million doses of the vaccine should it go into production, and I can confirm that the Isle of Man will have access to this stock agreement with NHS supply chain. At the end of last week, we published our preliminary report on COVID-19 antibody testing in the Isle of Man. This has enabled us to get an indication of the percentage of the island's population that may have had coronavirus. It is important to remember that, at this stage, a positive antibody test, that is, a test result indicating that someone has had coronavirus, does not mean that individual is immune from catching the disease a second time. As a brief reminder of the background, we announced antibody testing on the 1st of June with the arrival of 5,000 test kits. Our initial testing process targeted those attending hospital, those having a blood test, the close and high-risk contacts of those who have had the virus, blood donors, health and care workers, and a random sample of people who had called 111 with suspected COVID symptoms but who had tested negative. Targeting these groups allows us to get a mix of age, gender, and geographical spread. The report published last Friday takes us up to the 10th of July, at which stage 3,892 antibody tests had been completed. The results are mixed. As I've said time and time again, there is still much we do not know about this virus. We must also be mindful that any testing regime there will be false positives, false negatives, as well as room for error. A case in point is those who have had antibody tests who were confirmed as having had coronavirus. Out of the 210 people in this group, only 156 of them, that's 74%, had the COVID-19 antibodies present in their system. Now, it may well be that the antibodies become undetectable after around 50 days, or that the blood sample of a certain proportion of patients will not yield an antibody result. Taking the test results overall, it implies that between 1,680 and 2,520 people in the Isle of Man are likely to have had COVID-19 between the beginning of the pandemic and the 10th of July. As I say, these results are preliminary, which means they are subject to revision once additional data checking and analysis have been concluded. The other topic I want to touch on today is this week's budget update. I know that the Treasury Minister gave a briefing on Tuesday, but the package of measures announced is so important in our future, I think it is worth covering some of the key points again today. The budget updates seeks to address the financial challenges our island and our public services face as a result of the coronavirus. Because whilst the initial focus of our response to the pandemic was to protect lives and people's health, the virus has been just as damaging to the prosperity and economic well-being of our island. Government was quick to respond with a number of support packages, which we estimate will cost up to £72.5 million this financial year. This includes salary support of £27 million for over 12,000 employees across almost 2,000 businesses, £9.2 million paid out in business support to 3,061 businesses, and £4.1 million paid out through MIRA, the Manx Earnings Replacement Allowance. But as we move forward, our economic response to COVID must be more than shoring things up until the virus passes. The budget update is the starting gun in our economic fight back from the pandemic. We must look to the future and seize opportunities. That is why we have created a £100 million economic recovery fund, along with establishing an economic recovery group, reporting directly to the Council of Ministers, which will coordinate action and reaction to the economic conditions. We stand ready to invest in our economy, in our people, in our future, and this will include expanding opportunities for developing core skills at schools at UCM and working with employers and standing ready to create up to 1,000 additional retraining and employment opportunities if needed. Accelerating investment programmes and schemes to improve our digital capabilities, speed up national high-speed broadband, accelerate the climate change commitments and improve core infrastructure, being ready to support up to 1,000 jobs and taking our island forward to a greener, cleaner future. And we are accelerating and increasing spending on our capital programme this year, bringing forward £6.1 million in spending and a further £910,000 in minor capital works. This work will deliver vital schemes to enhance our national infrastructure whilst also stimulating our economy. We will do what is required to help our economy to recover and be fit for the future. And now to questions from the media. And first we have today is Chris Cave from Energy FM. Good afternoon, Chris. Fastyr mai.
Not after last night, but it's a pleasure to be here as always, Chief Minister. We'll start with the budget announcement from the Treasury Minister on Tuesday, if we could. The news of that £100 million recovery fund and the pledge to stimulate the economy and create jobs. There were lots of what I'd call buzzwords used, but how worried are you about the distinct lack of detail that's provided on how exactly this will happen?
Well, obviously, the Treasury Minister will give a significant amount of more detail. He can't go into every scheme verbatim in the Tynwald debate. He's given enough detail to say where the money will be spent. For example, some of the minor capital works that we're bringing forward will be simple things like improving some of the regional swimming pools, spending more in our glens. We're doing more to help people get out and walk. We'll be fast tracking, as I've said, the telecommunications strategy. We had, when I was first elected, as Chief Minister, I set up a working group on telecommunications, and it came back with a report that we should have a 5-year plan of speeding up the fibre to the cabinet, in other words, the cabling to your house to give you a much quicker broadband speed. And we're looking at speeding that up now, and we're working on that as we speak. So there are a number of areas where we're going to be helping. And the retraining of people, we've probably at this moment in time got an extra 1,000 people who are unemployed compared to this time last year, and that will probably increase as when we take the MIRA away and go and replace it with the day-to-day unemployment benefits. So we have to ensure that we do our utmost to help those people that through no fault of their own find themselves out of work, with as much help as possible to get into the new jobs that will come along. And the green technology is incredibly important, and that's an example. So more details will come through as we go through this, and I'm sure the Treasury Minister will be more than happy to answer any of your questions for any of the minutiae areas, Chris, that you're looking for. Your second question.
Yes, this is to either of you gentlemen. Following on from the results of the trial by Oxford University this week and where exactly we stand when it comes to access to the vaccinations, can you indicate how many we'd have access to? Would it cover the entire population? And if not, who gets priority?
Right, well, I'll start that one off and then hand over to David. Now, I'm led to believe the government have ordered, if they go into production, 100 million, and they will give us a percentage of that, the same percentage per capita as they're buying for their population. So we have been promised that we will get that as soon as they get it. But I'll hand over to David for further detail.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Minister. It's just to echo what the Chief Minister said. The way it'll work is it's on a per capita basis based on population. My quick maths that I did this morning works out if they do deliver on their order of 100 million, that works out us getting about 100,000.
Sorry, my connection, I think, cut out.
So 100,000, Chris, if my maths is right, based on them actually delivering on their 100 million doses.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have is Alex Bell from the BBC. Good afternoon, Alex. Fastyr mai.
Good afternoon there. Just to make reference to the budget which was passed this week, I noticed that the direct government support for industries like travel and tourism and fishing is going to continue until the end of September. Given that these industries have been markedly affected by the fact our borders are closed, can we take that as any kind of indication that things will be back to some sort of normality by the end of that period?
Well, obviously, we have to try and look forward, and obviously the tourist season ends in large numbers at the end of September. We'll have to, I sincerely hope that the number of cases is significantly reduces to allow us to go to level 2, level 1 on our borders. I don't think we can read anything into that. I'm sure the Department for Enterprise will be working with Treasury to review that should it become clear that in September that there is still a major problem. But I suppose I always try and be optimistic, and let's hope we're all moving in the right direction. So let's hope that support won't be needed after that period of time.
Thank you. And second question, as you mentioned it, I think just about every press conference, we can't let our guard down. We have to be prepared for the virus if it does, heaven forbid, make a return to the island. Given that we are largely restriction-free domestically now, it's fair to assume the spread of any second wave would be rapid. Is there a protocol in place for if there is a new confirmed case, so things can return to any kind of restriction environment quickly? And if so, will you publish it so people know what they'll have to do?
We've already done that, Alex. Every household on the Isle of Man got information on what would happen in the certain levels if we saw a repeat of COVID-19 on the island. I don't know, David, if you want to expand on that.
Yes, so it's contained within our Stay Safe document, Alex, that was published. It might seem an age ago now, but I think it was about 6-7 weeks ago when we put that out there. Contained within that document is a RAG rating, red, amber, green, and in fact even a black rating in relation to the number of cases and what actions would be taken at each stage to unwind various things, put other things back in place, such as social distancing. So that document is still available online if people go onto the COVID website, and they'll be able to see what measures would be taken based on the infection rate. One of the things that I do need to stress, though, you mentioned it, without social distancing, it would expand exponentially and rapidly through the population. If there were a second wave, it would probably expand in the same way as we saw the first wave. So it would be a slow build up and then a high number of cases. But again, the greatest defence we have is our 14-day self-isolation, which we have kept in place. So if people are adhering to the rules that are in place at the moment, then the only cases we should have emerging on Ireland are people who are already isolated. There shouldn't be community cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. And just to reiterate, if people respect the 14-day quarantine when they come to the island, back from a trip off island, then yes, they may bring it back, but it will be kept in their house and we can deal with it. It's when people don't respect the rules, we don't invent them for our fun. They're there for a reason. They work. 14-day isolation catches everything and will defend the island. Right, next we have Amanda Cashmore from Jeff the Mongoose. Good afternoon, Amanda. Faster Mai.
Faster Mai, Minister. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Good. Sorry, I had some technical issues there. My first question is about Guernsey. Now, they've announced business travellers will be able to come to their island for day trips to attend meetings. Are there any plans for something similar on Ireland in a bid to encourage business relations here?
Well, we already do that in a way, Amanda. We allow key workers in for businesses to come. So if you could prove that there was an absolute urgent need, a key element to bring someone over to have a meeting on the island, then you would be allowed to do that. So if we analyse their scheme, that person has to show that there's no one else capable of attending Guernsey to sort out that meeting. So it can't just be an average meeting. It's got to be a really important one. And then they have to do exactly what we do, where you've got to go to the island, have the meeting and go straight back without coming into contact with anyone. And they even encourage you to have that meeting at their airport. David, from a health point of view, do you want to, again, to expand on any detail there?
Yeah, so as the Chief Minister has already said, in relation to our situation, if there is a key worker that's required to come in, then they already can do. In relation to what Guernsey has announced with the business tunnel, one of the key things is they have to demonstrate as part of that process why the meeting can't be held virtually, why it has to be held in person. So it's not just open for someone to say, I want to come in for a day and chat about this. They've got to demonstrate as part of that process why they couldn't use, for instance, something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, why it's got to be a physical meeting. So it's not just an open tunnel for business people to travel in and out on Guernsey. There's very strict protocols around it. And even where it is approved, it's from the airport to the meeting. They must socially distance. They must wear masks when commuting, and in fact the company themselves has to provide secure accommodation should for instance the plane not take off at the end of the day and then be stuck overnight, and all that has to be declared to the Guernsey government in advance.
Okay, I think we've lost Amanda, so we'll move straight into Simon Richardson from Business 365. Simon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My first question, if I may, is for the Health Minister. It concerns the Healthcare and Transformation Programme. We're told it's progressing reasonably well given the COVID epidemic. So far, though, we've heard much about the transformation, the cultural change, systemic change, and we've seen, of course, the establishment of Manx Care. Now, there's a huge amount of information about the processes and the plans for structural change, but at its heart, there are no answers yet to the three main things that people obviously need to know. Will the changes involve privatisation of elements of the service? Will the costs at the point of delivery be introduced? And will it improve care and bring down waiting lists?
Right, we'll take each one in turn. Firstly, I can say categorically there is no intention to privatise any of the services. The point of the NHS is that it is free as the point of delivery. There is no plans to change the free at the point of delivery. What Manx Care will be doing, however, is they'll be looking at who best to deliver services on their behalf. So, for instance, some of the community stuff that we currently do within DHSC, there is brilliant community organisations out there that are probably, to be quite frank, a lot better at what they're doing than what we can deliver in DHSC. So Manx Care can commission services. So they can go out to, say, that community group and actually draw up a contract saying we want you to deliver this service in our community. But that is a relationship between Manx Care and that group to deliver an NHS free at the point of delivery service. In relation to costs, there is no plans to increase costs either. Manx Care will not see an increase in the point of costs. The plan is to keep things exactly as they are, certainly for the time being, while we embed Manx Care. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten your third one. I can't read my handwriting here, Simon.
No, it's all right. I hit you with the three there. Will it improve care and bring down waiting lists?
Well, actually, the most important point, obviously, Manx Care's entire focus is going to be on delivery of services, which leaves the department and myself as Minister to focus on the policy. So, yes, the way it's being structured, I think it will actually improve the delivery of services. There will be much more of a streamlined management structure within there, focused purely on delivery. So I believe it will, in the long term, bring down waiting lists and improve services. The way I've always spoken about the transformation and Manx Care is that what Sir Jonathan Michael has come up with, and I've joked with this to him many times, is he's basically come up with a UK trust structure without the problems. So he's actually improved on what the structure is in the UK, and I believe that will deliver improved health outcomes for people on our island.
Okay, Simon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we had a bit of a breakdown in communication there, but I'll go to the next question, if I may, for whoever would like to answer.
A nice short one, yeah.
It concerns the Go cards. Commuters in Onchan, Baldwin and Lax being offered Go cards for free bus travel at busy periods to help ease congestion during the promenade roadworks, which is very nice, thank you. But wouldn't it be easier to just scrap the bizarre traffic flow arrangements at Governor's Bridge and the bus and bike lane at St Ninians?
Well, obviously, neither the Health Minister and myself are experts on the Department of Infrastructure or highways, and it's really important that they make the decisions. Obviously, the Minister Mr. Baker has agreed to review the situation to see what can be done to help. Even if he took away that lane, you still have a significant increase in volume of cars because you can't get into Douglas via the promenade. So they're the highways experts, and I suppose we have to bow to their greater knowledge. But obviously they do take on board the feedback from the public, and where possible they will make changes. As I don't know, David, you don't use that road too much, do you?
Well, I'm actually one of the rare breed Chief Minister who doesn't actually drive, so I suppose you could say I'm actually impartial in this. But as a Douglas MHK, one of the things I would say is I've spoken to Mr. Baker about the Glen Crutchery roadway because it falls within my constituency of Douglas North. DOI is taking on board the feedback from elected members and from the public as well. But there is going to be, we've got to accept commuter problems around Douglas while the promenade is going on. As Mr. Baker said in Tynwald, it is being done with the best of intentions. We are speeding up the prom works. I sat both in Tynwald and then prior to my election in the public gallery for many times listening to people say we need to speed the prom up, we need to get it done quickly, and that's exactly what DOI is trying to do. But the Minister has made quite clear he will take on board the comments from the public and also from representative MHKs such as myself in relation to the layouts.
Right, well,
Okay, thank you very much.
Before we move on to Tim, I see that we've got Amanda back. I don't know, Amanda, do you want to come in with your second question? Can you hear us okay?
Great. Yes, I can hear you now. And my apologies if Simon asked this. I can hear him talking about health spending there. But I wanted to go back onto the budget, which showed no adjustmental increase for the mental health service. Considering how the government has often focused on the detrimental impacts of COVID-19 on mental health, can you explain why more funding has not been directed here?
Right, well, I'll let David answer that, as that's his department.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that, Amanda. At the moment, the belief in the department is that we can cope within the existing budget of mental health, that they are looking to expand the services available, but they're working in partnership with other organisations in relation to that as well, and it's believed it can be done within the existing budget. That there's allocations we can, if necessary, move from elsewhere that we're holding in contingency to bolster that if required.
And do you anticipate you will see an influx of more mental health patients?
We already are. We are seeing more people and people who have struggled over the COVID period because people have not just obviously had anxiety and maybe concern if they have certain conditions that COVID might affect, but they've been separated from family and loved ones as well. So it's natural and expected that we would see an increase. At the moment, the mental health services are looking to work through that and to help and assist people. But as I say, should we require extra funding, there is various things within the department that we can move towards mental health should that be required.
Yeah. But before we move on to Tim, I'd just like to say mental health, when I was the Minister for Health and Social Care, something I'm personally very passionate about, and we put the extra resources in there to enable people to go out and work with the police, to help the police when they're out in the community deal with the issues of people who have mental health issues and need extra support. And there was extra support and training given to the police, and that has helped significantly. But as David says, there will be a demand on all of our health services because we've had to shut down effectively the hospital. There's a significant extra demand across the whole service now. If the health minister comes back, and I'm not saying the Treasury Minister is going to give him a free cheque, but if there is a clear case where we desperately need to bolster services and the funding just isn't there at this moment in time, then it will get serious consideration going forward. Right, moving on to Tim Glover from Manx Radio. Good afternoon, Tim. Fastyr mie.
Good afternoon, Fastyr mie. I'll do the questions the other way round, as you were just on the health side of things there. Yeah. Just on the backlog, and obviously a lot of services, cancer treatments, for example, and other consultations were put on hold for some time during the COVID. How are we getting on with addressing that situation and getting ourselves back into more like the situation we had before and even going beyond?
So at the moment, the elective surgery, which has been the big thing that's been shut down, has now restarted. It is, let's be honest, going to be a slow process restarting because we do have to continue to do swabbing to cover our consultants' indemnities policies. Their Royal Colleges actually have a policy around swabbing that all patients must be swabbed beforehand and have a clear test for at least 48 hours, 48 hours before any treatment or operation can be undertaken. So that process is now in place. All of our lists have had to be reprioritised because obviously there's people who have had issues over the COVID period as well and have added to the list. So they have all now been reprioritised and we have started with the most urgent. We are looking at waiting list initiatives within the department to see what we can do, particularly in the pinch point areas in this financial year to try and get the list down. But as I have made quite clear throughout this, and I'm going to have to be brutally honest again with it, it is going to have an impact and it is going to mean that in some areas the wait is going to be extended compared to what it was before.
And my other question, just touching on the being at the airport yesterday, and we welcomed the visitors from Guernsey to a bleak and Manannan-laden Isle of Man, unfortunately. But seeing the Orkney aircraft there, it just made us think, and we were talking about, is Guernsey at an advantage because it has its own airline as we come out of COVID-19, and are the talks with Orkney to maybe share costs and have that service here on a more permanent basis?
Well, Tim, there's certainly a benefit of having your own plane, whether you're an individual or a jurisdiction. But with that luxury comes a cost. And the cost in a normal year, the loss of that service is circa £10 million. There's figures bandied around between 20 and 30 million that they may be looking at this year. So because of obviously the COVID-19 having a real impact on their service, you've got the depreciation of a plane, etc., or two planes, however you need. So I've always felt, yes, we are having meetings with the Guernsey airline because it would be nice to see if there is more that we can do in working together, and I know that will be happening over the next the coming weeks. However, I still believe firmly that working with other existing airline companies is probably the best value for taxpayers. Yes, having your own airline where all the staff are based on the Isle of Man is a good idea initially, but at the end of the day, you have to sit down in the cool light of day and look at the costs, pound, shilling and pence. And if it was close, then obviously it would be clear that you would want to have your own airline. But the figures that we've seen and the advice that we've had is that it's better to use an existing airline operator and get them to underwrite it for the next year or two, if that's what it's going to need to take to ensure we have services, because we're going to, the trend seems to be for the next couple of years less travelling across the world, and therefore there'll be less profit for airline companies and they'll only deal with big cities, etc. So we need to ensure that the Isle of Man is in a good position. Obviously, you learn from other jurisdictions. If it's felt that the Guernsey situation is better than what we currently have, then of course we'll look at it. But my initial views are that whilst there are benefits, the cost could be significant and we would have to take that money from somewhere. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move on to Sam Turton from Isle of Man Newspapers. Good afternoon, Sam. Faster
Good afternoon. I just wonder if we could start with when people have been returning to the island and they've been going into quarantine. We've had several people tell us that they have had no checks at all. They've not been called. They've not been emailed. They've not had a visit to the door. Whose responsibility is this, and who should be carrying out these checks?
Right, well, the initial checks will be carried out by our borders team, so our old repatriation team and people who are now located at our ports will be contacting people. Now, there's no guarantee that everyone will receive a visit. The number of phone calls I'm not too knowledgeable about. David might be able to advise on that in the future, but it is our borders team who will be doing that. Now, if they ring or go to the door and the person isn't in the house, they will then be referring that matter to the constabulary to investigate. David, have you got anything further to add?
Yeah, if I could just add, Chief Minister, it is random visits. Bearing in mind, Sam, the policy only came in on Monday, so we're talking Thursday today. There will be random calls. There will also be random actual physical knocks on the door. If the people are not in the house or there is not an answer, then the matter will be referred in, because the person should obviously be in the house and should be capable of being able to answer the door if they are in isolation. So the simple fact is it's not someone going to be contacted every single day of the 14-day period via phone or physical knock. It will be randomised due to the number of people involved, but the likelihood is if someone tries to breach it, they will get caught out and they will be prosecuted accordingly.
The audio on this keeps cracking up on our end. I think also this has been coming from where people have returned to the island already on the compassionate trip, so if they've got back to the island as returning residents who have then gone home, they've said these visits have not been happening, they have phone calls there. So that's where the concerns come from. But if we could move on, Mr. Ashton, stick with COVID again. What concerns is the department having in terms of COVID on people's health?
I'm sorry, Sam, you broke up a bit there. If you could just repeat that.
Long-term symptoms and impact on people's health. Again, we've had a sort of few comments about people having quite nasty after effects of having, once they're no longer showing as being positive for the virus, but they're still having health difficulties forward from this. How prevalent are we seeing this on the island?
So this is something that's now emerging worldwide. It's not unique to the Isle of Man. In relation to people who've previously had COVID, there are people are starting to see various effects. Many of it is in relation to breathing difficulties, which we already knew COVID attacked the lungs. And for instance, one of my friends in the UK who's actually had COVID, she's asthmatic anyway, and she's been experiencing breathing difficulties since she's had it. We don't know what the long-term effects, to be blunt, are. It's a new virus. It's not been around that long in terms of a virus. So it will be a wait and see. I know the health services have been helping to try and support people with some long-term effects, or what we think will be long-term effects, but it's too early to say. We will have to basically mould our processes around what evidence emerges and what treatment people need. The unfortunate thing with viruses is everyone's body reacts differently. Just like when people get the flu, you have some people who get over it very quickly, they have no after effects. You have other people that have after effects for a long, long period of time. And I have no doubt it will be the same with COVID-19, and we will have to adjust accordingly.
Thanks very much, Sam. You also get man flu, Sam, which is really bad. Right, we move on to Leanne, last but not least, Leanne Cook from 3FM. Good afternoon, Leanne. Faster Mai.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how the connection is. My first question is for you, please, Chief Minister. I know in regards to the borders, we've recently reached level 4, but what criteria has to be met for us to reach level 3?
Right, well, we have published that to all households, Leanne, but it's an infection rate in the United Kingdom of 1 in 5,000. Obviously, we also have to look at the capacity on the Isle of Man for test tracing, swabbing, etc. But about 1 in 5,000. Obviously, the last move was 1 in 2,000. We waited a little bit longer until it was 1 in 3,900. I think the UK have sort of plateaued a little bit, but 1 in 5,000 or better before we move, and we look at our capacity too. Again, David, I don't know if there's anything further, or if I got it all.
No, Chief Minister has covered off basically pretty much all of it there. Just to say we take a multitude of things into consideration, but as the Chief Minister said, the first thing that would prompt that review is the 1 in 5,000 community infection rate in the UK.
Okay, and my second question, with reports the UK is putting aside £1.5 billion to protect its art industry, is there anything the island's going to do to protect our arts industry?
Well, obviously, Treasury have allowed the sector to keep the money that it's had, despite the fact that there's been no exhibitions on until we opened up. There's been some very innovative work done by the Arts Council online, putting out poetry and various individual works. It's a tough one. We don't have a bottomless pit. We don't have some money tree that we can go along and pluck. We're spending millions on testing. We've spent millions on PPE equipment. We expect the economy to be significantly down by 100+ million, and we've spent 74 million, we think, in this calendar year on benefits to help people who maybe who don't have a job, or businesses that are struggling. So if a good business case is put forward, then obviously we will look if an area is struggling. Obviously, we had a question earlier, Leanne, about mental health and the demands on that. So I suppose it's a juggling act, if I'm honest with you. It's trying to get the balance right, but remembering that we can't go out and print a load of money. We do have reserves, but they're precious, and we have to make sure we get good value for them. So it is what it is. There's no simple answer there. I wish I could wave my magic wand as someone who loves art, poetry, and music. I'd love to say yes, that here's 500,000 or something, but I can't. But if there's a good case or a good business case, then it will be looked favourably, I'm sure, by the Treasury team. Thank you very much, Leanne. Right, well, thank you very much for your questions today. Now, finally, a shout out. And last week I acknowledged the hard work of our swabbing team, who had been based at the grandstand as they were being disbanded. But swabbing does, of course, continue, and our community swabbing team have taken over duties at the grandstand. And this is in addition to continuing to undertake swabbing around the island by visiting those who are frail, vulnerable, or too ill to attend the grandstand. The team, made up of staff seconded from endoscopy, dental and adult social care services, have been going to homes all over the island, ensuring that no matter what someone's personal circumstances are, they can be assured of access to testing for COVID-19. Well done to the team, and please keep up the fantastic work. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.